All right, let's have a look at an overall picture of quadratic inequalities. So let's imagine we had a quadratic equation, and the quadratic equation was x plus 3x minus 2. And that was going to be either equal to 0 or less or greater than 0 or whatever. If it was equal to 0 and we were to draw our parabola would look something like this. We know that x would have to be a positive 2, and that would be my 2 here. And x would have to be negative 3. That's my negative 3 here. And of course, we could draw the parabola going through those 2 points. Oops, I'm going to end up going through the 2. And it looks something like that. And over down here somewhere would be 3 times negative 2 would be negative 6. But ultimately, the answer would be either x is going to be negative 3 or x is equal to 2. We would have 2 discrete points. But what say it's not an equality, because this is an equality, not an inequality. Let's make that into an inequality. So the first thing we would do is solve for the 2 points. We want those 2 points, and we call them critical values. Doesn't matter if you don't talk about them as critical values, but we still need to know, in essence, if it's going to cross the x-axis. If it doesn't, then a solution is not possible. And that includes for inequalities as well. So we want to find the 2 points here. Now in this case, this crosses at negative 3 and 2. And it has those discrete values. So let's change it up a little bit. Let's now say x plus 3, x minus 2. And this time, let's say, is going to be less than 0. Now, if it's going to be less than 0, we're still going to have our parabola. Here it is. We're going to find out what those 2 values are. We're going to literally solve for x and x in the same way as we did here. But when we come to having a look at them on the actual axes, or if we were looking at them in terms of where they would sit on a number line, we would now treat them differently. So although, yes, here is my 3, that's my negative 3, and here is my positive 2, and I would still draw a line going through like this, and ends up through there. Now what we're looking at, because this is less than 0, the solution isn't this point and this point. The solution is now between this point and this point. But because it's not equal to, it never touches this point, nor does it touch this point. So if we were actually drawing this on a number line, we would draw this. Here is my negative 3, here is my 0, here is my 2, and we would say it's going to be not touching that point, not touching that point, but every point in between. And that would be my solution. So to write that, we would write it in the same way as we'd write any other inequality. We'd say that x was going to be less than 2, but x was going to be greater than negative 3. It's a negative 3 there. And that would be my solution. All right, let's change this up a little bit. Now let's make it greater than. Now if we say x plus 3, x minus 2 is, I've got this in the way. Wrote it in the wrong place. Just one moment, folks. That's going to change this up a little bit. Here we go. Just going to move this a bit. Sorry, my bad. All right. So, that was bad. This is called lack of planning. X minus 2. I have to fit a lot on the page, so. All right. And let's make that greater than 0 this time. Well, the same would apply. We'd still have the same parabola. Here it is. And we'd still solve, yes, for those 2 points there. So we'd still find negative 3 and 2. And if you want to make it equal to 0 to make that happen, that's what you should do. You need to find those 2 values. So let's find them. Here they are. We've got our negative 3 and our 2. And our 0's in the middle. And our parabola still looks exactly the same as it did before and does that. There it is. However, this time, if it's greater than that, to make that true, we are looking at points beyond on this side. So the points are no longer here, the points are in the middle. They're all these points from here to here. Now the points for the inequality are from here down and from here, here up and from here down. But because it's greater than, it cannot be these points. And so on a number line, we would write -3 and a 2 and a 0. And we would say, can't be that point, but it's going to be everything below. Can't be that point, but it's going to be everything above. So therefore, we would write this as an inequality as x is going to be less than -3, or x is going to be greater than 2. Notice we do not write it as a one-line inequality like this. We're not going to write it like this. You could if you reversed these things here, but then that would make it a little bit non-mathematical. It wouldn't be a sound mathematical acumen. So we're going to use the correct vernacular. We're going to have two separate statements. Now, of course, sometimes it's going to be greater than or equal to. So let's change that and have a look at what that would do. All right, so now let's say we've got the same thing again, x plus 3, x minus 2. And this time I'm going to go, before we had equals 0, I'll just write that again. So it solves nicely into x is equal to -3, or x is equal to plus 2. But let's say this time we changed it. We said x plus 3, x minus 2, and this time we said is greater or equal to 0. So now on our number line, same stuff, same again, it would still cross at -3, and it will still cross at 2. Oops, I'm breaking, sorry. Watching what I'm doing. Okay, it's a minus. Okay, here's our 0 there. Now, what do we notice? So now it's going to be going from here to here, but because it's equal to, it's a solid block. So it's going to go from here to here, and it's going to be everything that's greater than. It's going to be on this side, and it's going to be on this side. So we would write the solution is x is, in this case we're going to have to say is greater or equal to 2, or x is less than or equal to -3. So it's this bit on this side and this bit on this side. And that's how we would express that answer. All right, let's do another one. Let's go x plus 3, x minus 2 is less than or equal to 0. And again, I won't draw the parabola, I'll just draw the number line this time. So again, we've got our number line, we've got our -3, we've got our 0, and we've got our 2. So in this case, it's going to be less than, it's going to be inside. So greater than is always outside, less than is always inside, but it's going to be equal to as well. So it is going to include this point here, it is going to include this point here, and it's going to be everything in between. So that's how we would draw that number line, or how we're going to do this, or x in this case is going to be less than or equal to 2, and greater than and equal to, -3. So that's how we would state that particular identity. All right, well, I hope that makes sense. Do have a look at some of the quad inequality questions which I've been through, and hopefully this will make sense. The answers, by the way, is doing as many as you possibly can. Okay,